and welcome to another First Chapter Fridays. Today we are going to look at a historical fiction novel. The title of this novel is Stepping on the Cracks by Mary Downing Hahn, who is one of my favorite authors. So today we're going to read the first chapter, and then we'll read the synopsis. Chapter 1. One afternoon in August, Elizabeth and I were sprawled on my front porch playing an endless game of Monopoly, or Monotony, as Elizabeth called it. Your turn, I announced. I just passed the bank and picked up $200 to add to my pile of paper money. For once, I was definitely winning. When she drew a card that told her to go to jail, Elizabeth threw it down. She was already broke and in debt to me because I owed Atlantic Place, and her man kept landing on it. Every time that happened, she had to hand me $500 rent. Elizabeth scowled at her little pile of money and ran a hand through her blonde hair, putting a few more tangles in it. Then she poked the Monopoly board with one bare foot, just hard enough to slide the expensive hotels and cottages off my property. Our little man rolled across the porch, and some of the paper money fluttered away. "Let's go somewhere before I keel over and die of boredom," Elizabeth said. Ignoring her, I crawled around, gathering up the playing pieces. Unlike Elizabeth, I was perfectly content to spend the rest of the day where we were. The heat had melted my bones away, and I felt as limp as a rag doll. "It's too hot," I muttered, "to do anything." But Elizabeth wasn't listening. Climbing the porch railing, she grinned down at me. "Dare me to jump?" Before I could say yes or no, Elizabeth hollered, "Geronimo!" Arching her body, she flew through the air like a circus acrobat and landed gracefully in the grass. "Come on, Margaret," she shouted. Not wanting to be a sissy baby, I held my breath and leapt off the railing and hit the ground so hard I knocked the scab off my skinned knee. As I spit on my finger to wipe the blood away, Elizabeth hopped down the sidewalk. "Step on a crack," she yelled. "Break Hitler's back. Step on a crack. Break Hitler's back." Despite the heat, I stamped along beside Elizabeth. Under my bare feet, I saw Hitler's face on the cement, his beady eyes, his mustache, his mean little slit of a mouth. I shouted and pounded him into the pavement, and every time I said his name, it was like swearing. It was Hitler's fault my brother Jimmy was in the army. Hitler's fault Mother cried when she thought I wouldn't hear. Hitler's fault Daddy never laughed or told jokes. Hitler's fault, Hitler's fault, Hitler's most horrible fault. I hated him and his Nazis with a passion so strong and deep that it scared me. Behind me, the screen door opened, and Mother called out, "Margaret, how often do I have to tell you not to jump like that?" She frowned at me from the porch. "You won't be happy till you ruin your insides, will you?" Elizabeth grinned at Mother, her eyes squinting against the sun. "Hi, Mrs. Baker," she said. Mother looked at Elizabeth, but didn't return her smile. "What's all the shouting?" she said. "You two were making enough noise to wake the dead." "It's a game I thought up," Elizabeth said. "Step on a crack," she yelled, jumping hard on the sidewalk to demonstrate. "Break Hitler's back." "When I was your age, we said, 'Step on a crack, break your mother's back,'" Mother told her. "We tried hard not to step on cracks." "Well, that was before Hitler," Elizabeth said. "The world was different then." Mother leaned against the door frame, her arms folded across her chest, and sighed. "Yes," she said, agreeing for once with Elizabeth. "I guess it is." For a moment or two, nobody said anything. I saw Mother glance at the blue star hanging in our living room window, and I knew what she was thinking. That star meant that Jimmy was overseas fighting a war that Hitler started. There was a star in Elizabeth's window, too, because her brother Joe was in the Navy. That summer, there were a lot of stars in windows in College Hill, and not all of them were blue. Some, like the one across the street at the Bedfords' window, were gold. The Bedford son, Harold, had been killed in Italy last summer. That was what the gold meant. In the silence, I heard the surge of organ music from our radio. It was time for The Romance of Helen Trent, one of Mother's favorite soap operas. As she opened the screen door to go inside, Mother paused and looked at Elizabeth. "Where are you two going this afternoon?" she asked. "Bike riding," Elizabeth said, as if I'd already agreed. "Don't you dare take Margaret down that hill on Beach Drive," Mother said. "You almost killed yourselves there last time." But she was speaking to the air. Elizabeth had already darted through the gap in the hedge between our houses. In a few seconds, she was back with her brother Joe's bike, an old Schwinn. The crossbar was so high that Elizabeth could barely straddle it, but she rode it anyway. Taking my seat on the carrier over the rear wheel, I held on to Elizabeth's waist as she pushed off across the grass. Wobbling till she picked up speed, she pedaled along Garfield Road down Dartmoor Avenue. The hot sunlight poured down through the green leaves, dappling the dirt road with a lacy pattern of shadows, and the Schwinn's big balloon tires bounced over the ruts. Mrs. Bedford waved at us from the front porch. Mrs. Porter smiled at us from her side yard where she was hanging her laundry out to dry, and old Mr. Zimmerman nodded at us from the corner. His little dog Major barked and wagged his tail. On a cooler day, he might have chased us. Through the open windows of every house, we heard snatches of radio shows. The voice of Helen Trent and the happy song advertising Rinso laundry soap followed us down the shady street. College Hill was so peaceful, it was easy to forget the war. In fact, Helen Trent's love life seemed more real than the battles our parents talked about. Although it was 1944 and World War II had been going on for over 2.5 years, nothing had happened a lot to change our lives. Except for Jimmy's absence and a lot of shortages, everything was just the way it had always been. Alright, we're going to stop there. I'll read the synopsis. Step on a crack, break Hitler's back, Elizabeth yells, jumping hard on the sidewalk. Her best friend Margaret follows suit. Margaret's mother is watching the two girls from the porch. When I was your age, she said, step on a crack, break your mother's back, and we tried hard not to step on the cracks. Well, that was before Hitler, Elizabeth says. The world was different then. There's a blue star in Margaret's living room window, which means that her older brother Jimmy is overseas fighting the war that Hitler started. There is one in Elizabeth's window, too, for her brother Joe. But the girl's private war is with Gordy, the worst bully in the 6th grade. After he and his friends tear down their treehouse, Margaret and Elizabeth are determined to get even. They follow Gordy to his hideout in the woods and stumble onto his alarming secret. It makes them more sympathetic towards the troubled boy. It also makes them question their feelings about war. Alright, if you are interested, we do have, well, this is the library copy of Stepping on the Cracks. See you next week.